Yeah, I'm losing my edge.
Let's talk about foreign exchange markets.
Okay, let's do it, because this is something that's going to be interesting and continues
Yeah.
to be. I mean, I have a special place in my heart for FX. I started my career there. I put my very first trade on with my hand shaking so bad I could barely write it on the trading cards, and spent 20 years trading FX in the spot and futures market. So let's dive into this one, because there's always something to do in FX.
Absolutely. And Pete, when you were younger, I guess allegedly, we don't know if you ever were actually younger, but when you were younger, as you say, you would have been at the trading floor, and there would have been tickers for how many different currencies, right? Like right now, we mainly look at like 4 or 5. A lot of people look at euro and sterling, and if you go to, and this is actually interesting because the 2020 version of what I want you to speak to here in a second, Pete, is a lot of these like cultish trading groups around FX, and they are cultish and small because there's like, there's how many different countries with their own or regions with their own currencies,
Right.
and there are that many different angles on foreign exchange and the US dollar, and then crosses. I mean, there's thousands of permutations of currency trades here, Pete. How many, when you first showed up at the floor and you sent in that first trade, that I'm sure it was one of 9 winners before a loser that took you down. It was really sneaky. I don't know.
I made $25. I was killing it.
$25.
Oh yeah.
Then?
I'll never forget the first day I made $200. I walked out like I was just out of cloud. So
wasn't that the best? And then you lose $300 the next day,
Yeah.
and you're like, why are we buying milk? We can't buy milk.
So just to date myself, I was trading the Deutschmark, which was, and you know what? It's interesting. Different periods of times. Yen was an active market. Pound was actually the most active currency when I started. Swiss franc. That was where all the big boys lived. It was
my namesake.
It was the Wild West, and did a ton of volume, but the movement was huge. Things like the Australian dollar were actually traded on a blackboard, which means there were so little bids and offers in a pit. They just write up the orders on a blackboard, and you could walk over and trade them. So things have changed dramatically. You take what you're given. For me, there's a lot more opportunity now. I love that. I love the expansion of, when the euro came online, it took away a lot of things. D-mark, French franc, Italian lira, a lot of other currencies. So not that they were actively traded in the futures markets, but pound, euro, pound, yen, and Canada have always been a focus, still continue to be.
So yeah, and this is all to say, all of that stuff is super interesting, and it's like nice for like a Saturday afternoon read, or if it's your professional job and you show up and like you said, you have a blackboard that has all of this stuff, you have electronic tickers over here, and all you have to do is focus on foreign exchange. But here's the thing, Pete. Here's the rub: is that most people's professional jobs these days, even you, whose professional job it was for years and years to trade exclusively foreign exchange, like those markets evolving, everybody's careers evolve, and now you can be a lawyer, doctor, whatever, and also trade these markets, but you don't have enough time to sift through all of that, and you have stuff like what's happened the last week here, where you've got British pound and the euro, 2 highly correlated markets dating back to Pete's first trades before the euro was invented. When the euro did come online, very highly correlated markets here, and they've been moving in opposite directions for the last week or two of trading because of a one-off event in Britain. And so when your full-time job isn't trading, or when you're new to this market and you've been trading stocks and you want to look at foreign exchange markets, this can be disheartening, because a lot of people will tell you that trading the euro and the pound, just pick one because they're relatively similar trades, and you've got a divergence in the last week or so here, Pete, of about 3%. That's a lot for FX markets, and it makes that new trader or that part-time trader super confused with foreign exchange markets.
Absolutely, and we talk about selection dilemma often. This is a trade that you just can't say, okay, 7% in 2 days. I think that's interesting. There's a lot of construction involved here in terms of waiting, in terms of capital. Is it a doable trade? Sure. But the time involved and the time that if it actually starts moving, you have to devote to tracking this single idea is challenging. These were the tools we had. We had a defined amount of tools that weren't easy to use, weren't intuitive. And we took what we could. You took the opportunity to use the tools that you had. Now we're in a different landscape. So are these available tools? Sure they are. Do they require a different set of understanding? Absolutely. I really, you know what? I think every time we've seen innovation in the products world over the last 20 years, not just the last 5, that has simplified the ability to make a decision has been a game changer.
Yeah. And this is the next step in it. So like, it's nice now that people who are part-time traders or they're stock traders, but they want some foreign exchange in their portfolio, they have these markets here: 6E, 6B, 6J, 6A, 6C, all of those, 6M, all of them. I could keep going. But it's almost like jumping miles ahead when you're just trying to break in there, or you have to devote, like Pete used to. I mean, you would devote 10 hour days to learning all that stuff and trading all of those nuances. It's not feasible here in 2020 for the modern trader. And so the next evolution is this singular US dollar trade that has a little bit of effect from everything that's going on relative to Brexit, but it's muted in this SFX because, Pete, it has exposure in all these other markets that gives you a single foreign exchange market, the US dollar here, that doesn't break down with these one-off moves. I mean, we saw in Japan, new prime minister, and the yen is moving off of that a little bit. And you've got stories going across all these different places, and it's interesting. It's great stuff to do research on. But if every time I come to my trading platform to trade foreign exchange, I have to read 10 stories and then pick the one currency I want to trade, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for a single trade here, that this white line that's showing me, just like, is there I open my platform, is there opportunity here in trading foreign exchange? Yes or no? And then I trade it. Last Thursday, when the stuff started to break down, you had a rally in the morning here that in the euro, and then it's immediately thwarted, and you can see it moves higher and then hangs on here, and then the sterling gets killed, and it drags down this euro a little bit, and the US dollar started its day on the downtrend and then ends higher because of the sterling bringing it lower. And it's nice that it's a summary of these two lines here. It's not, you don't have to worry about, oh, should I pick the orange line or should I pick the blue line? It's just this one singular foreign exchange market all the time, Pete, that has these different weightings that we think are relevant here in 2020. Like you said, trading francs and lira that might have been relevant a couple decades ago. These are the most relevant trades here today, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? This is what's, as you said, relevancy is interesting. What is, where does interest come from? And there have been several what they call trade weighted dollar baskets created when they unpegged the dollar back in, I believe, the 70s, and they're constructed in a way that was representative back then. It's not really relevant now. So I think we want to trade what's relevant, what makes is of interest to us, and actually what drives our particular product we want to trade. So I think this, especially in the FX spot, you can hear just from a simple walkthrough, and it's not simple, but a walkthrough of choices here. Is there's a lot of variables, there's a lot of things to watch, and there's a frustration element because unless you're picking 4 out of the, say 4 out of the 7 here, it's going to be tough to pick the right one in terms of whatever opinion you want to do. Honestly, I just brought up our October dollar index, and I just threw in orders at 49.83 and 47.83. I don't, there's a little bit over and under our 100-point range. I don't see it being any easier than that. Now, are those the right levels? Hey, it's 100 points on each side for a sweep. Sure, I don't mind managing something with, I call it a little bit of a jump or an edge. It's an edge till it's not. But I like the fact that I'm not trying to guess what the whip is going to be off of these chuckleheads, but I'm going to trade a little bit of the opportunity whip gives me.
Yeah, and you're speaking to. We'll get out of here on this because FOMC is about to meet here. You're speaking to the fact that there are these events, that have to do with our central bank, that have to do with the Eurozone's bank, Bank of China and Japan, and Bank of England, all these different places, and it's so hard to go in there and be like, all right, well, I'm going to set levels to trade 3 or 4 of these so I don't miss the opportunity. Maybe it's in euro, maybe it's in yen, maybe it's in pound. And no, it's so much easier to go to one simple but still unique trade that gets all of that movement and say, okay, I'm putting in an order here and an order here, and that's where my trade opportunity is for whatever event, for whatever's going on in the world. It's a singular foreign exchange market at the small exchange.